It's time for Clarion Connection with Ron Wilshire, and joining Ron today will be Jack Giering, local musician, and telling some great stories and playing some music. So let's pick up the interview in progress.
Little bad sections, editing, so on. It'll take up most of the session, and we'll have maybe an hour left. And as we were talking earlier, many times I'll go in there with a preconceived idea of a tune that I want to try. And John will say, I'm not in the mood for that today. And I'll say, well, what do you want to do, John? He'll say, oh, I'll give you 10 minutes, write something new. And that's the way most of these tunes were born. There's an honesty in that. You just really don't have a chance to be pretentious or worry about whether somebody's going to like it or not. It tends to be more from the heart, more real that way.
Now, this album is, can I still call it album?
Sure.
is an instrumental album, the same as the first one, but boy, this definitely has I don't know, it just feels good when you listen to it.
Yeah, I made more of an effort to make grooves in this CD that the minute you listen to it, you're either going to like it or you aren't going to like it. It hits you in the face, and you don't have to wait and think, where's this headed? It's there. It starts that way.
And I think it will probably add to the popularity, although you did get a lot of great reviews and I think sales on your first of the trio.
Yeah, the first one sold out 4 times now. We're in our 5th reprint. So that's, in this day and age, that's, to me, amazing.
And actually, there hasn't been an official release of this CD yet.
No, it hasn't. Phil released a CD recently called The Cover of Love. At the same time this one was being manufactured, and we decided to hold back on it so we weren't competing with ourselves that way. And this will be released officially soon. We'll have a public relations firm from Nashville handle our web presence, so when you Google us, you can find it anywhere you want. But for now, it is actually for sale on CD Baby and Amazon.com in the form of downloads and physical CDs both.
So if, we're going to play a few tracks later on, and as I mentioned, it's all instrumental, but lyrics do exist for some of the songs. You were talking about the possibility of Willie Nelson.
Oh, yes. One of my best buddies is Dick Darnell. We go back to '69. He was the producer at this studio that I worked at. And Dick's became very successful in the music industry. He has a lot of LA connections, and he's trying to hook us up with a radio TV deal. At the same time, we were next door neighbors with Willie Nelson in Evergreen for a long time. And I sent lyrics that I wrote after we'd recorded the CD to the third tune on here. It's called Whatever Happened to Yesterday's Smile. And I wrote one verse, Dick's written the second verse, and we're awaiting Willie's writing of the third verse. And whether he'll come back from space long enough to do it or not, time will tell.
Well, let's play that. Where's Yesterday's Smile?
That's the third one.
Third one, and maybe someone will have some ideas for lyrics too.
Or if you do, write Willie.
listening to Where's Yesterday's Smile by the Jack Giering Trio, and my guest today in Clarion Connection is Jack Giering. Jack, you were mentioning that there's a possibility of some lyrics to come in a later version of this song.
Yes, we aren't working hard on it or anything. I wrote a verse, and I've sent it out to two of my friends, and I'm hoping that they get it completed, and someday down the road we can put that version together.
Want to give us a taste of the lyrics yet?
Let me see if I can remember them.
Yeah, it's a senior moment song. Where's Yesterday's Smile?
Yeah.
And some of those...
Where's the fun and all the laughter? Where's the happy ever after? Could we just sit and talk a while about whatever happened to yesterday's smile? Then the bridge was, yesterday's tomorrow just never looked like this before.
Sounds great. A lot of people be looking for this CD, and as you mentioned, it's available online, Amazon, and the usual places. But how did you start your relationship with Phil and John?
I was recovering from my third heart attack out of 10. Well, now 11. I had one last week. I don't know if I told you. It was a mild one, though.
You've had more than Dick Cheney.
Yeah, Dick Cheney's a slacker. Yeah, I'll teach him how to do this right. He is. He's a softie. I'm tired of hearing his BS. Here I am, 11, and these are documented ones.
Right.
But anyhow, I thought it was the best therapy for me. My wife didn't want me to take my music to the grave. I had been on the road. We had a child on the way and decided it was not a wholesome atmosphere to raise a family in. And I left music for many years. And there was no reason when I was too sick to work again that I couldn't go back to my music. So I started recording with no purpose in mind other than recording some music. A friend of mine named Neil Williams is friends with John, Sferra and Phil Keaggy. He came to the studio and heard it, went and told John about it. Next thing you know, I was invited to John's studio. Then Phil heard what I was doing with John, and he wanted involved. And it all evolved into this.
I remember a long time ago in probably the late 60s, Glass Harp actually played at the Ross in Clarion.
Right. That was during a time when the Scarlet Pumpernickel was playing about every Friday and Saturday up there, and I can't remember the particulars. I believe there was somebody in our band unable to make the job, and they filled in, and what a nice job they did. I'll never forget Phil's rendition of Season of the Witch. He sounded just like Michael Bloomfield. He was fantastic, and that's a young Phil. He wasn't very old at all then.
Right. I was actually there, too. I remember at one point everybody just sat down on the floor. There was no everybody. Right. The floor was packed, and just listening to him.
It was fantastic. I remember people laughing about the tiny drum set that John Sferra uses. Several toms, a snare, a couple cymbals, a hi-hat, and a single bass drum. And after the first song, they weren't laughing at all anymore. He's one of the finest alive. His drums are on permanent display. That very set in the Hall of Fame.
Really?
Yes.
Well, nobody's laughing now. We're talking with Jack Giering of the Jack Giering Trio, and you're listening to Clarion Connection.
Since 1994, Clarion Forest VNA Hospice has been striving to provide care for your loved ones whose life expectancy is limited due to illness. As a non-for-profit organization, Clarion Forest VNA Hospice has based their care on individual needs of patients and their families. Clarion Forest VNA Hospice focuses on comfort and provides support not only to the patient, but also to the family and caregivers. Their goal is to provide their patient with the support and care they need in order for them to live life as comfortable and fully as possible. Clarion Forest VNA Hospice, when care and comfort are needed the most. Phone 814-297-8400.
I'll have the grilled cheese, please.
Hot or cold?
Hot isn't grilled hot?
We're still looking to hire a cook for the summer season, so cold?
But your name is Hot Grilled Cheeseria.
Yeah, I can give you bread and cheese, and you can try grilling it on your exhaust manifold.
Don't be stuck without a chef or any other seasonal employee you need. Log on to ClarionVenangoHelpWanted.com.
You know, if you have heated seats, you could sit on it and have a panini.
Okay.
Post as many jobs as you like in minutes and use as many words as you want for one low price. Clarion Venango HelpWanted.com. Long name, amazing results. Ms. Munchler, would you file these documents, please?
Oh, okay, after I take your temperature.
Why are you a receptionist?
Well, because I couldn't find a nursing job.
Then why didn't you go online and check out Clarion Venango HelpWanted.com?
Okay, sir, take off your shirt and I'll take your blood pressure.
They have hundreds of local jobs, hospital, sales, IT. Oops, sorry. She's just...
Ooh, your blood pressure just went sky high.
Oh, boy.
Okay, I'm going to need a specimen. Take this.
Get out! Clarion Venango HelpWanted.com. Long name, amazing results.
1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys are sexually abused before age 18. It's done in secret, but the beginning stages of sexual abuse often happen in public. It's called grooming, how offenders gain trust of kids and the adults around them and create opportunities to abuse. You can learn to recognize these moments in the early stages of child sexual abuse and intervene. PCAR, the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape, has the facts on how to stop sexual abuse before it happens. Visit heroproject.org to learn how you can protect a child.
SafeHuntingPA.com is your guide to safe, successful hunting in Pennsylvania.
Small game hunters are heading afield, and the Game Commission urges these safety
Radio PA and the Pennsylvania Game Commission have teamed up to provide hunters with the latest information on archery, firearms, tree stands, small game, and much more. If it's about hunting in Pennsylvania, it's at SafeHuntingPA.com.
Keep your firearm pointed in a safe direction.
SafeHuntingPA.com. Brought to you by Ram Trucks. Guts, glory, Ram.
He's back, folks. Jack Giering and the Jack Giering Trio. That's the first cut of their new CD, In My Arms.
This song was originally written to be, please don't put that needle in your arm again. I wrote it at a time I had extreme sorrow over losing a friend to a heroin overdose. And we didn't think we needed anything quite that morbid on our CD, so we just changed it to In Your Arm.
Connection on C93 and WWCH. And today's guest is Jack Giering of the Jack Giering Trio. And we're listening to parts of his new CD, and we're just talking about the various cuts on the CD now. And Jack, if you just wanted to give a rundown.
Yes, the last tune on this CD is very special to all of us, especially Phil. His brother, Mike Keaggy, is a bit older than Phil, and he's been lying unable to speak for over 2 years, a victim of a terrible stroke. He visited Phil several years ago, and he was in good health then, and Phil was wise enough that he recorded their conversation. I sent Phil a tune, and it came together real well, except we all thought that it needed something extra and couldn't put our finger on it. And then Phil played this tape of his discussion with his brother Mike over the tune, and it fit perfectly. And he reminisces about the old days when he drove a car advertising for the local theater, and had a bullhorn, and he went all across the countryside in the 50s, and about how he sang at proms and how he got a tattoo of a skunk on his arm when he was in the service because he felt sorry for himself that said, "Nobody loves me." And then later on, he got married, and he and his father at a flea market decided to change that, and now it reads, "Nobody loves me except Sharon." Plenty
of great stories behind the music. And like I said before, we've had the first of the trio albums, and then this is the Jack Giering Trio. What's in the future for the trios?
The future now is the John Sferra Trio. Phil came up with the idea of us doing a trilogy, each one of us taking turns headlining the CD. And we're probably 50% through with the rough writing of the tunes for it already. I expect it to take a while because I'm determined that each one will be a step higher. And the higher you raise the bar, the more you put yourself on the spot because nobody likes to go backwards. And we will be spending quite a bit of time on it. And also, I'm working on a project I love called the Northwest PA Eastern Ohio Project, where I'm featuring local guitarists and vocalists. And we're on the fifth tune towards that project. So I'll be working on both of them at the same time.
You had mentioned before, kind of jokingly, about your heart attack snap, but that medical situation has limited your public performances.
It's pretty much made it impossible for me. My first heart attack, I aspirated. For those of you who don't know what that means, the crude thing is I threw up and breathed it in while I was unconscious, and it burnt the heck out of my lungs till they'll never be right. Consequently, if I get a cold, there's a huge percentage chance I'll end up in the hospital with pneumonia. And sooner or later, I won't come home if that keeps happening. So I can't go into buildings day after day that have thousands of people breathing every disease known to man and survive very long. So I'm not even considering it.
It's almost like you were a teacher back at Keystone all those years ago.
Yes, as we were talking before, I don't ever remember a week going by when I was teaching that I didn't have some sniffly virus of some kind. It's just part of the job hazard.
Right, but that hasn't limited your love of fishing.
Not one bit. The fresh air and the exercise is fantastic. Between the fishing and my wife and the music, that's what I believe kept me alive and kept me going. I think if I had sat and done nothing, I wouldn't be here today. I think I owe my whole existence to good exercise.
Well, we certainly are glad you're here today and always. And we wanted to end this episode of Clarion Connection with another cut from your CD. Which one are we going to play?
Yes, this one we called Salubrious. It's number 5 on the CD.
Any background?
Recorded the original track that was similar to this clear back in 1969 in Summit Studios, and I used the groove from it. And I was heavily influenced by a couple of British bands that did some real spacey things like the beginning of this is. It's kind of a combination of the two.
I remember years ago when I got back from service and was in college, you had contacted me about using a reel-to-reel player, and I listened to an entire tape that you had recorded out there. Boy, that was some amazing music back then.
It was. The amazing thing about that studio band is after we disbanded, the guitarist went immediately on to become Dolly Parton's lead guitarist, and he worked there his whole rest of his working life till retirement. The drummer ended up with Sugarloaf, Green-Eyed Lady, and so on. And Dick Darnell, the bass player and producer at this studio, ended up full partners with John Denver till the crash. He ran Caribou Studios in Colorado, and he's become extremely successful as an artist in his own right.
And he's the gentleman you said that you're possibly entering into a contract to have parts of your music used in films and commercials and that type of thing?
Yes, that would be such a godsend for me, because there's no other way that my music is likely to ever do anything monetarily good for me other than that. And that's one of my big hopes, is that when I'm gone, at least I can leave something that helps out my kids and my wife and the rest of the family.
While you were in Colorado, you also played for a pretty famous musician at that time.
Yes, that would be Baby Huey and the Babysitters. The way this came about, they were in Colorado and in Denver, and their keyboard player was goofing off in the park. He climbed a tree, fell down, and compound fractured his right arm, which isn't real helpful with fast licks on the keyboards. So they wanted to record at Summit Studios, and I was available. So the next thing you know, there I am recording with them. They were my idols. Their drummer, Moose, was the drummer with Otis Redding at Monterey, and I felt just to even be in the same room with the man was pinch yourself, is this real, let alone working with him. And we recorded a tune called Listen to Me, which I believe is still the most downloaded ringtone tune there is. And we recorded an awesome version of the old Sam Cooke song, Change Is Going to Come. And you can find those both on YouTube if you look for them.
And that career was tragically shortened.
My early music career was so marred by people with drug problems, it was horrible. And Huey had a terrible heroin addiction. And his reason for coming to Denver was he wanted away from it. He wanted to quit. And he was doing so well. He'd gone several months and led a clean life, and things looked bright and rosy. And then first thing you know, he decided to go back to Chicago. There was a knock at his hotel room door. He answered it. It was somebody with heroin. And he shot up a dose and hit the floor dead. It started a roller coaster of horrible events after that. Our saxophone player called the record label and demanded that we be paid when they put out a album with these tunes. The night of his death, they kicked in the door to the studio and stole the masters. Somehow, months later, it shows up in Chicago on Curtom Records. A Living Legend was released. We had our lives threatened. They told us it'd be cheaper to kill us than to pay us. And I ended up having to disband with my band in Denver. I ended up in South Carolina with another band. And it was there that I decided I'd had enough of this. There was no way I wanted to raise a family under these conditions. And I came back home.
We're certainly glad you did. We're talking with Jack Giering. Thanks for joining us on Clarion Connection today.